Hello and welcome to a conversation on the Daily Bern. I'm your host, Eric Miller, joined today by an awesome, fierce, fighting progressive from the great state of Nebraska, Kara Eastman. How you doing, Kara?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking some time to speak with me. I've been following your political career since the 28 campaign, been donating, rooting for you, sharing your stories and so forth. And, you know, the last poll I saw, I don't know, you maybe have seen something more recent, but you were up by 2 in the most recent poll. What is the state of the race?
We're up by 3 now.
Right on, right on. Yeah, and it was just a whisker away in 2018. It was like 1 point, less than 1 point difference swinging, right?
1.9%. It was one of the closest races in the country. So we're back again and hoping to close that gap. And well, we need to win.
Here. Yeah, let me. You have, it's an all hands on deck campaign. You're endorsed by Bernie, brand new Congress, President Obama, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Moms Demand Action, Social Security Works Privilege, Paul Rokana, Katie Porter, my cat Brody endorsed you. You know, everybody's endorsed you. So it's an all hands on deck. Let me ask about, you know, the messaging. So one of the really wonderful things about your campaign, obviously it's authentic. You don't take corporate PAC money, although you are out raising the Republican incumbent, who I'll just call him bribes, straight up takes bribes, right? You're out raising him on small dollar donation. Does that mean the message is resonating more over time since 2018 to now? Have you seen a trend in that direction?
I have, absolutely. Not just, I mean, across the country, but also here in Nebraska. And my opponent likes to talk about, you know, how our money comes from out of state or whatever. But the fact is, when you don't rely on small dollar donations, you don't know how much the other person gets from in-state small dollar donors, because they're not itemized on the FEC report. So we're really proud of all of those small donations, and I call those people. I call them to thank them as much as I can. I mean, we have a lot, but to me, I mean, we need to change the American political system and stop the amount of money we're spending is ridiculous. The fact that I'm spending as much time as I am raising money, you don't want your candidate doing that. You don't actually want your elected official doing that either. So we need to change some things. But for now, we're really proud of the campaign we're running.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. And it's the incumbent's name is Don Bacon. And, you know, I'll just kind of cue you up on a few things. He's a climate change denier. Is that fair to say? He votes with Trump, I think, 93% of the time. Mm-hmm. He's tried to repeal the ACA in a multitude of ways. You know, even now during a pandemic, you know, including sort of repealing the protections for pre-existing conditions. Can you talk about, you know, just how terrible he is? Pick one of those and go with it, if you will.
Well, right. And I mean, so he was notorious for not voting yes, but saying hell yes to repealing the Affordable Care Act. Now he's kind of changed his tune a little bit, although he just voted against expanding the Affordable Care Act. He voted to gut pre-existing conditions again. He voted against lowering prescription costs in the middle of the pandemic. So he's saying he's changed his tune. He's looked at the polling. He knows now that people like their health care, but he's also lying to people, saying that I want to kick people off health care when I'm in favor of something called health care for all. I mean, come on.
Right. Yeah, I did notice. I watched the debate from 2 nights ago, and, you know, he's using those, you know, disingenuous talking points about, you know, Medicare for all, healthcare for all, you know, removing private insurance. Well, you'd have better, cheaper insurance. You were making that case, and, you know, you'd have freedom. You'd have freedom of choice. What would that mean for your district? I often wonder, you know, are there hospitals closing in rural areas? What does healthcare look like in your district? And, you know, how vital literally would Medicare for all or healthcare for all be in your district?
Well, so our district is 98% urban suburban. So we are, while the rest of Nebraska is certainly more rural, we are an urban center. But what we've seen across Nebraska is certainly that rural hospitals have closed. And people, what we feel here is people drowning in copays, deductibles, premiums, out-of-pocket costs. Their prescriptions are out of control. Prescription costs have gone up during the pandemic. And so many people have now lost their health care because they lost their job in the middle of the pandemic. So this is an important issue to me. And look, I'm running because of my mother's own prescription costs. I want to go to Congress to fix a broken system. And there are ways that we can do that. There are bills out there that are great. There's ways we can fix this system. But the fact right now is that the Republicans who are against expanding healthcare are funded by pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies like my opponent, and therefore are against this. And when we're looking at people's, the bottom line, not being people's health, not being saving lives, not being preventing bankruptcy from medical costs, but rather worrying about the bottom line for health insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies, well, that's the problem with the American political system right there.
Here, here. Yeah, so let me just plug your website, eastmanforcongress.com. She could use $small donations. She could use volunteers. Actually, let me pull it up real quickly. So here's her website. Her issues are there. Endorsements is basically a laundry list. Go check that out. On your Twitter recently, there's this, sort of delineation of all the times he voted to kill Obamacare. And that's, this is all pre-pandemic, and he's, still working on that fight. So, again, like you said, he's paid by his corporate donors in order to do so. But, go to eastmanforcongress.com, make a donation. You can get your signs here, voting information, and so forth. So I just wanted to share that before I got too much further. So let me ask about, some of his other votes that have directly negatively impacted your constituency. He voted against the HEROES Act. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I find this to be fascinating. So over the summer, Congressman Earl Blumenauer from Oregon reached out to me and said that he wasn't able to get any of the Nebraska representatives. We have 3 Republican representatives. None of them would sign on to the Restaurants Act, which would directly help local, independently owned restaurants. This is something that's near and dear to my heart. So we held an event, a Zoom event, where we invited a few local restaurant and business owners and the media. And that night, Don Bacon signed on to the Restaurants Act. Then he voted against the HEROES Act recently that had the Restaurants Act embedded in it. He is showing, and he gives all these excuses for it, but he's showing that he doesn't prioritize small businesses. He doesn't prioritize mom and pop shops. He prioritizes huge corporations. He's in debates. He's saying, well, you have an issue with Trump hotels. Like, well, yeah, I do, because I don't think the Trump hotels needed the money as much as my friend who owns a coffee shop near my house. Right. The LA Lakers got money from the CARES Act. I mean, I think they were going to be okay. So right. we need to start flipping this model where we're helping out regular people first. And look, it's not an anti-corporation thing. It's just saying, like, let's help out workers. Let's actually get money into hands of people who need it, who are struggling right now to put food on the table or to be able to make rent.
Hear, hear. He also brags about being bipartisan, and I was kind of curious, like I heard him really trying to slip that in, like he was coached, I got to make that point, and it made me wonder the why. My theory, and I'm curious here, my theory was, he sees the trend. He was a never Trumper in the beginning, and then he voted. He was, pretty much a Trump lapdog currently, but he might see the writing on the wall, and he's trying to, sort of hedge that bet a little bit. Why do you think he boasts about being bipartisan in such an overt way?
Yeah, I think that's it. We are a swing district. We gave an electoral college vote to Obama in 2008, and he has aligned himself wholeheartedly with the far right wing of his party. He was endorsed by Steve King last election cycle. Like, he was proud to have that endorsement. And now somebody must have reminded him, oh, hey, there are actually Democrats and independents in your district. And so now we've got to actually start talking to them. He's not bipartisan. He's using a measure. It's called the Lugar Index, and that measures sponsorship, co-sponsorship. But his voting record has been 93% of the time with Donald Trump. That is not bipartisan. And every politician says they reach across the aisle, all that stuff. But what he has done he has never represented people like me in this district. He has never represented Democrats or independents who are looking for leadership right now, especially in the middle of this pandemic.
Right. Has he been present through all of these years? Does he do town halls? Does he have a presence in the district?
He's done a few town halls, but this is something I find fascinating too, because they're very structured, they're very canned, but not very many. And yet we do see him at stuff. We see him at parades, we see him at ribbon cuttings. And there are some people who've said that they see him at things that representatives before him didn't go to. But I don't think that's a great measure of somebody who's actually going to stand up and fight for the district. And, he's just, I think he does a lot of pandering, and I don't think that's okay. I think we need somebody who's going to authentically represent people in this district.
Right on. You mentioned Steve King. Let's just give a shout out to JD Schulten running to pick up that seat. That would be a huge plus too. Let me ask just some of the things that you're running for, right? So he's obviously terrible. We could talk about that all day, and I would love that. But you're not just fighting against him; you're fighting for your constituents, right? So tell me about your healthcare for all plan. Particularly from maybe from pre-K to long-term care. Give me sort of an overview of your plan.
Well, so my background is in health. I've worked in domestic violence. I ran shelters. I ran a homeless shelter. I started a national volunteer program for people with Lou Gehrig's disease. And I ran an organization in Omaha for 12 years called Omaha Healthy Kids Alliance that focused on energy efficient, safe, healthy housing. So that's my background. And I decided to run for Congress because my mother was prescribed a $2,500 pill that she couldn't afford to take. So I believe that we need an expanded healthcare system. The bill that I like and support is HR 1384, sponsored by Pramila Jayapal. It's called the Medicare for All Act. And the reasons that I think that bill is good is that it does eliminate just the outrageous price tag that healthcare is costing the United States government right now, where we're spending 19% of GDP on healthcare. We're projected to spend up to 24%. And this was actually before the pandemic that this projection was. And yet our outcomes are so poor. I mean, we have unbelievable, childhood obesity rates. We have, there's just so many things that we could be doing better when it comes to our healthcare. And especially when it comes to racial disparities within our healthcare. And frankly, there's never been a time where Black Americans have been as healthy as white Americans, and we need to fix that system. And that's something that I've been doing in my career. And I believe that we can actually start creating a healthcare system that works for everybody. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine who's a doctor who had prescribed some medication, and she's fighting with the insurance company about covering something that she has prescribed as a doctor. Like, I think she has the expertise. And the insurance company is now saying, well, we're not going to cover that. We covered it a year ago, but now we've changed. And she's like at the end of her rope saying, I'm a doctor. I went to medical school. I should be able to prescribe the things that I believe my patients need. So, with the bill that I like, the only thing people would lose is that fight with their insurance company.
Yeah, right. And the higher bills, right? And co-pays and deductibles, right? So that's, Pramila Jayapal's bill. I've been asking a lot of candidates if they got into the House, would they vote for that? I've also been asking, if you made it into the House, what would your position be on sort of the year over year, ever increasing military budget? How would you vote on that as that came up each time?
Well, I mean, what we've seen recently is even the Pentagon come out and say that they don't need as much money, especially for machinery and artillery. Like, we need funding for people, especially right now at the State Department.
Right.
The idea that the State Department is so significantly defunded that key cabinet positions have not been filled, this really impacts our ability to engage in diplomacy around the country. It's a threat to our national security. And so I want to see a funded State Department. This is another reason why we just have to get Donald Trump out of office. Like, he is just significantly threatening this nation in so many ways.
Yeah, that's such a great point, and that doesn't even crack the top 100 news stories of the year, right? That the State Department is sparsely populated and positions aren't being filled and so forth, right? That we're in a weakened state, right? Such a great point. How about this is going to be a softball. How about ending fossil fuel subsidies?
That is a softball. Well, and why wouldn't we? I mean, renewable energy is now cheaper. Nebraska should be a leader in wind and solar and renewable energy. And I'm a huge proponent for green and healthy housing. It's what I've done in my career and seen the benefit of that, which would create great paying unionized jobs. We have got to get our economy back on track. And that's the way to do it. Everything locally produced, locally done. We could have local window manufacturing companies that are created. We've got to start investing heavily in our infrastructure to get our economy back on track, to get jobs out there, and to start repairing a lot of the things in our country, the bridges, the roads, the housing that need to be fixed.
Yeah, amazing. And I think, let me just heap some praise on you real quick. You mentioned your social work and your career and advocacy and, helping, various disenfranchised communities and so forth. You're not a careerist, right? And that's why, you're not going to get into office and certainly take money from, Lockheed Martin or, ExxonMobil or, Merck or whomever, right? This is, the people of Nebraska second have an opportunity to have a representative that would represent their interests from a place of uncorrupted authenticity, right? And that is Kara, versus Don Bacon, who we can go look at his open secrets or whatever. I asked the fossil fuel question. One of his big donors I saw was from Occidental Petroleum, a lobbyist, right? Let's give him 25 grand, right? Of course he's going to resist any movement, fighting climate change and so forth. He's paid to obstruct it, right? So Kara, it's like she said, she's 3 points up, but we got to run through the finish line. EastmanForCongress.com. Please go make a donation, volunteer, make some calls for an hour or two. Like, this is a flippable seat and a critical one. Especially a bold progressive running in a state like Nebraska. If you can win on that platform there, who could argue that a progressive couldn't win anywhere, essentially, right? So let me ask you another issue that's probably going to be a frontline fight. I know he's sort of worked to cut Social Security and do funny business with the ages and so forth, right? I have a feeling no matter who wins, Trump or Biden, come 2021, we're going to be asked to, we went through a hardship. We have to tighten our belts, austerity measures, and these programs are going to be on the chopping block. How would you defend Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare?
To the nail. These are earned benefits, and there's no way that we can allow the United States government to play with these. When it comes to Social Security, my opponent the other day talks about wanting to raise the retirement age because he believes life expectancy is 90 when it's actually 78. And maybe if you're a member of Congress, you can work to your 70, but if you're working in the trades and working with your hands, like, that's a little rough. But he and Trump have also just basically flat out said they're going to cut Social Security. They're going to cut Medicare. They call them entitlement programs. They're not entitlements. They are earned benefits.
Yeah. Well, we're entitled to them because we earned them. We paid them, right? But they've sort of framed entitlement as a negative word, right? Which it shouldn't be. Definitionally, it shouldnly be, right? Mm-hmm. How about other investments in your district in terms of infrastructure, universal broadband?
Yeah, I mean, so our like I said, our district is mostly urban suburban, but broadband is an important issue for the entire state. But we need to be investing locally in roads and bridges and housing and public transportation. This is an urban area, and there are food deserts. There are people who cannot get to work because of the lack of public transportation. We have gravel roads in our urban city. And I just talked to somebody who just a veteran who just got back from Iraq, who said that the roads were better there than here. Wow. In some cases, which they mocked the roads there, but he was telling people like Omaha's got it bad too. So and housing is an issue that is near and dear to my heart because that's the work that I did for 12 years. We are continuing to have children who are poisoned inside their homes by lead, by environmental contaminants. And it's all preventable, and all we need is the right political will and the resources to be able to do that. We have the resources, frankly. It just takes a collaborative, community-based response. And I'm excited to get to Congress to start implementing that in our own community because we need it. Right
on. How about racial justice, civil rights? Is that an issue in your district?
Absolutely. And we've had a number of peaceful protests over the summer. And I'm very proud to have been endorsed by over 50 Black leaders in our community who helped me create a racial justice plan for the community that is on our website and that I'm really proud of. My background is in bringing people together to solve problems. And it is clear that we have to address the systemic racism in our community and our country. And frankly, I'm tired of seeing children of color just be disproportionately impacted by things like lead in our community. It's time to fight for equality and equity everywhere.
Hear, hear. Well said. And just one more issue before I kind of let you go and ask you a few closing questions. Gun safety. You're endorsed by Moms Demand Action, and maybe tie that into education because we terrorize our children with shooter drills and so forth. Talk about your position on gun safety and sort of education, public education.
Sure. Well, my daughter, grew up in the Omaha public schools, and the day after the Parkland shooting, she came to us and said she was afraid to go to school. Yeah. That was the first time that I had ever heard her say that. As a mom, it broke my heart, and it was really hard to say to her, like, everything's going to be okay. It's unbelievable that it has taken a pandemic to halt gun violence in schools. I mean, we shouldn't shut down schools to prevent this. So, and most of us agree. I mean, 89% of Americans believe that we should have violent criminal background checks. I mean, these are not like crazy ideas. They're not radical. They're very common sense, and they don't violate people's rights, but they actually protect children.
Right on. And if you were, I would think the case to be made there, if you were, a law-abiding gun owner, which a lot of, sort of gun owners sort of defend, if I'm doing nothing illegal, then I shouldn't have these, the obstructions or whatever they call them, right? But, if you were a law-abiding gun owner, you would want every other gun owner to follow those same laws, right? Otherwise, it makes everyone look bad, right? I don't understand the resistance to common sense gun legislation. I guess it's paid lobbyists and representatives like Don Bacon. I don't know if he takes NRA money.
He does absolutely. And frankly, it's a marketing campaign, right? It's like, nobody there. I don't know any Democrat that's out there talking about repealing the Second Amendment, but that's what they say we're trying to do.
Right. Yeah, and take away your health care. Is that the biggest challenge? Like I had Carrie Evelyn Harris on, and she referred to these policies not as progressive, but she called them people-centered. And she learned that by framing it that way, your people are more receptive, right? So, for instance, if you say, if you lead off with, I support the Green New Deal, someone on the other side might already be turned off because they've been propagandized. But if you say, how has the climate affect your yield this year or whatever, then, you have a conversation going, right? Has that been the biggest issue, is overcoming that right-wing framing on some policy issues?
I think that has been an issue for us for sure. And frankly, the Republican Party has been good at poisoning certain phrases, and also there's been so much misinformation put out there about things like Medicare for all or about the Green New Deal. And so immediately, like the ads that are on TV say that I want to ban, they're talking about like wanting to ban beef in Nebraska,
Right.
And which is crazy, and forcing people to eat tofu. And we have more cows in Nebraska than we do people. That would be that gives me a lot of power as one person in Congress, but it's ridiculous. And what we should do, right, is put out policy differences, explain them to people. Some of these things are complex, despite what the president says. Healthcare is complex,
Right.
And let voters then decide, instead of what my opponent is doing is just attacking me on television. And I had a little kid, a 7-year-old kid, come up to me the other day. And he said, I saw one of your ads on YouTube. That was totally taken out of context. He's 7 and he gets this.
Wow.
It's
the future's bright. That gives me hope, right?
It is. Yeah.
You know, it's funny, those ads, they must be effective, but you think, I mean, that doesn't pass a smell test. Like any reasonable person that would see that, I'd be like, well, she probably doesn't want to ban cows. That's ridiculous, right? It doesn't take much to have a moment of critical thought, right? You know, well, she doesn't want to eliminate the police. You know, it doesn't take, you know, a lot of critical thought to overcome those, but I guess they're effective. You know, I see the ones of, you know, Kara Eastman. I'm not for you specifically, but you know, so and so wants to eliminate the police, and they invariably show a white woman in fear, like you know, it's terrible. It's just fear mongering. It's brutal. You see it. You're, you know, well,
it's also dangerous, and I think that's where. You know, and look at what's happened to the governor of Michigan, and even locally, we had a state senator receive death threats, and obviously in our campaign we get that kind of stuff too. But it's dangerous, and we cannot allow the parties or politicians or the media, the mainstream media, or outside groups, dark money groups, to continue to divide us. Like, we have to start bringing people together. We have to start healing.
Yeah, I think, you know, that 7-year-old gives me hope, right? Because I think the next generations they're not relying on traditional corporate media, right? They're triangulating their news. They're getting independent media like TYT and Democracy Now! And so forth, Intercept, right? And, you know, it gives you a clear picture and you recognize the biases, right? You know, there's, you know, you talk to anyone from Sunrise Movement, March for Our Lives, they're more informed than, you know, my parents, let's say, you know. So before I close, is there anybody else? Obviously, Election Day, November 3rd, EastmanForCongress.com. Go donate. Volunteers, probably more critical at this point in time. Anybody else on your slate that you want to make mention of that you're running with?
Aside from Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
Yeah, anybody in Nebraska that you want to like give a shout out to, or you know?
Oh yeah, we've got some great people. We have somebody running for our state legislature, Jen Day. She's fantastic. I'm blanking on other names of people, but yeah, I mean, there's some important races happening here in Nebraska. We have a unicameral, but the legislature is incredibly important because you know, we've been gerrymandered. Our district has been, and redistricting is going to come up soon. And I'm a little nervous that if I get elected, I'm going to wake up and be gerrymandered out of my own district. So we really need to change some things in Nebraska. And frankly, we just have to start fighting for our state to have a voice. One of the pitches I give to people is like, look, if we flip the presidency, flip the Senate, expand the House majority, and Nebraska retains an all Republican delegation, Nebraska is going to continue to have not very strong of a voice in the country. We are considered flyover country or flyover area to a number of people, and it's time to give Nebraska a voice.
Yeah, here, and you're certainly doing your part and a few other people's parts in order to make that happen. So thank you for that. Thank you for running in 2018 and not getting discouraged and running again. I know that's a tall order, and I'm sure there was a lot of soul searching and so forth. It's not easy to get up, dust yourself off, and try again. So thank you for doing that, and Godspeed on November 3rd. You know, there's a lot of people rooting for you. I can't wait to have you back on and call you Representative Eastman. I look forward to that day. Yeah, I want to close on an ad. You mentioned your mother. May I ask her first name?
Kathy.
Kathy. So I want to play this ad for Kathy and for all the Kathys that Kara is fighting for, right? Especially in the pandemic. So, you know, in honor of your mother, Kathy, I want to play this ad. And yeah, thank you for talking to me. Good luck on November 3rd. I can't wait to see what you do on the House floor, because I have every bit of confidence you're going to win. So, EastmanForCongress.com. Thank you, Kara.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The last time I saw my mom, she couldn't see over the stack of bills on her table. She was battling cancer for the 5th time. One pill alone cost $2,500, so she didn't take it. But that stack still kept growing. After she passed, it took us a year to sort out all those bills. I'm Kara Eastman. I'm running for Congress because our healthcare is a mess. Politicians and special interests are only making it worse. While my mom was fighting for her life, Congressman Don Bacon was fighting for a bill that would take our healthcare away. He didn't just vote yes. He laughed and said he was voting hell yes. Hell yes to gutting protections for pre-existing conditions. It's no wonder the drug and insurance industries gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to his campaign. I'm Kara Eastman, and I approve this message because we need to fix this.